I just set my coffee down when I heard the knock. Not a polite knock, not the kind neighbors give when they're dropping off a casserole. This was the knock of someone who already believed they had a right to be on the other side of the door. I looked through the peephole and felt my stomach drop straight to the floor. My son! My daughter-in-law! And behind them, a pickup truck backed into my driveway with the tailgate down. Follow me through this story and drop your city in the comments. I want to know where you're watching from. My name is Joanna, and I'm 63 years old. I live alone in a 2-bedroom craftsman house in Asheville, North Carolina, and I have worked for everything I own. 31 years as a registered nurse. Night shifts, holiday shifts, the kind of work that ages your knees and your heart at the same rate. When I retired 4 years ago, I didn't take a vacation. I took stock. My savings were modest. My house was paid off. My health was good. And my relationship with my son Neil was complicated. That's the word I used for 3 years after his wedding. Complicated. It felt kinder than the truth, which was that the woman he married had made it very clear, in ways both direct and indirect, that she considered me a threat to her marriage. Her name is Shauna. She's 41, sharp-featured, the kind of woman who enters a room and immediately starts rearranging it in her head. I tried with her. I genuinely tried. I brought food to their apartment the first Christmas. I offered to help when their son Marcus was born. I showed up when she had her wisdom teeth out, brought soup, stayed 2 hours, left when she asked me to. Nothing was ever right. I was too present. Then I was too distant. I didn't ask enough about her job. Then I asked too many questions. The goalposts moved so often I stopped trying to track them. What I noticed instead was Neil. The way he got quieter around me, the way he started returning my calls with texts, the way he started using phrases that didn't sound like him. We feel like you're not respecting our boundaries, words assembled by someone else and handed to him to deliver. The final argument happened on a Tuesday in March, 4 years before that knock on my door. Shauna had actually called, which was unusual, to tell me that I had overstepped by sending Marcus a birthday card with a $20 bill inside without asking her permission first. I'd like to pause on that for a moment. A birthday card. $20. My own grandson. I told her I didn't think that required permission. She told me I had a pattern of disrespecting her role as a mother. I told her that was not my intention, but that I also wasn't going to apologize for sending my grandson a birthday card. She hung up. Neil texted me an hour later. Mom, I think we all need some space right now. That space lasted 4 years. I won't pretend it didn't hurt. The first year was the hardest. I had moments sitting in church, driving home from the grocery store, walking through the neighborhood at dusk, where the grief of it would just land on me without warning. My son was alive, living 40 minutes away, and I hadn't heard his voice in 8 months. That's a specific kind of loss. It doesn't have a name. Nobody sends flowers for it. But I kept going. I joined a book club at the library. I started walking 3 miles every morning. I got close with my neighbor Connie, a retired school principal, who brought me over sweet potato pie that first Thanksgiving I spent alone, and sat with me for 4 hours just talking. I picked up watercolor painting, badly at first and then less badly. I found a therapist named Dr. Collar, Okafor, who helped me understand that I could grieve something and still refuse to let it consume me. And then, 14 months before that knock at the door, something happened that changed my circumstances considerably. My Aunt Vera passed away. Vera had never married, never had children. She was a retired librarian from Knoxville who had spent 50 years quietly and carefully saving money. She left her estate split between me and my cousin Deirdre. My share, after taxes and the sale of her property, came to a little over $240,000. I sat with that number for a long time. I'm not someone who makes impulsive decisions, and I was not about to start. I talked to a financial advisor. I put a significant portion in a ladder of CDs and a low-fee index fund, and with the rest, $110,000, I bought a small cabin. not a beach house. I'm a mountains woman. The cabin is in a quiet community about 25 minutes outside of Asheville, up in the hills, surrounded by hemlocks and a creek that runs along the back property line. It needed work when I bought it. I put in new windows, refinished the floors myself with help from Connie's husband Ray, updated the kitchen. By the time I was done, it was the most beautiful space I had ever owned. I called it my and then place, because that's what it felt like. After everything, and then this, I told almost no one about it. My book club friends knew. Connie knew. My cousin Deirdre knew because she'd helped me move some furniture up there one weekend. But I had not told anyone in Neil's orbit because Neil and I had not spoken in 4 years, and because, frankly, it was none of Shauna's business what I owned. I don't know how she found out. I thought about it a lot. My best guess is she ran into someone at a hardware store. Asheville is not a large city, who mentioned it in passing. Or perhaps Marcus said something to Neil at some point, some offhand thing a child hears and repeats. I'll never know for certain. What I know is that on a Saturday morning in October, at 9:47 in the morning, I heard that knock. I stood at the peephole for what felt like a full minute before I opened the door. I watched Neil shift his weight from foot to foot. He wasn't meeting Shauna's eyes. She was looking at the door with an expression I recognized, the particular focused look she got when she was executing a plan she'd already fully rehearsed in her head. I opened the door. "Mom?" Neil's voice cracked a little on that word. "Neil." I kept my voice even. "This is unexpected." Shauna smiled. It was the smile she used when she wanted something. I'd seen it twice before, and both times it had preceded a request she framed as an opportunity. "Joanna," she said, "we've been doing a lot of thinking, a lot of reflecting, really, and we realized that family is everything and that we've let too much time go by." I said nothing. She continued, "We heard you have a place up in the hills now. A cabin? That sounds just wonderful. We've hit a bit of a rough patch financially." She gave a small, self-deprecating laugh that I don't believe for a second was genuine. "Neil's company downsized his department in August, and our lease is up at the end of the month, and we thought, what better time to reconnect with family?" She paused, tilted her head. "We brought some things. Just essentials, really. We figured we'd get settled and then we can all sit down and talk." Behind them, I could see Neil's brother-in-law, Shauna's younger brother, a man named Garrett who had never once acknowledged my existence at family gatherings, unloading a box from the back of the truck. Let me tell you what happened inside me in that moment. The old version of me, the one who spent 30 years apologizing for existing too loudly in my own son's life, that version felt a familiar pull. The pull that says, maybe if you're accommodating enough this time, it will finally be enough. Maybe this is how you get your son back. I felt it, real and physical, right in the center of my chest. And then I thought about Dr. Okafor, about something she'd said to me once, "Joanna, love doesn't require you to hollow yourself out to make room for someone else." I thought about the 4 years of silence. Not one phone call on my birthday, not one text when I had a minor cardiac scare 18 months ago. Connie had taken me to the ER and sat with me for 6 hours, and I had not told Neil because I knew he wouldn't come. I thought about the birthday card, $20, my own grandson. I stepped fully into the doorframe. "Garrett," I said clearly, "please stop unloading that truck." Shauna blinked. It was fast, barely noticeable, but I caught it. She hadn't expected that to be the first sentence out of my mouth. "Mom," Neil started. "You are welcome to come inside," I said. "Both of you. I'll make coffee. We can talk. But nothing comes off that truck until we've had a conversation, and I want Garrett to understand that as well." Shauna's smile tightened at the corners. "Of course," she said smoothly. "That's completely reasonable." They came inside. I did not offer to take their jackets. I set the coffee maker going, and I sat down at the kitchen table, and I folded my hands, and I waited. Neil sat across from me. He looked tired in a way that went beyond sleep. His hair had more gray in it than I remembered. I felt the complicated love of motherhood, That thing that doesn't go away just because someone has hurt you. And I kept it behind my ribs where it belonged. Shauna sat beside him and immediately set her purse on the table with a small thud that said, "I belong here." "So," I said, "tell me what's actually going on." What came out over the next 40 minutes was this. Neil had indeed lost his job. His severance ran out in September. They were 2 months behind on rent. Shauna's income, she worked in pharmaceutical sales, had taken a hit because she'd voluntarily reduced her hours to be home more with Marcus, now 10 years old, which I privately noted was a choice with financial consequences she hadn't planned for adequately. They needed somewhere to stay while Neil found new work. They'd estimated 3 to 4 months, maybe 6. Shauna presented this as a mutual opportunity, a chance to heal the family. She said the word healing 4 times. She said the phrase fresh start twice. At one point, she reached across the table and touched my hand, and I let her, and I looked at her, and I thought, "You practice this." I also thought, "My cabin has 1 bathroom. I want to ask you something," I said when she finished, "and I want you to think before you answer." She nodded, gracious. "In the past 4 years, have you thought about calling me?" A pause. Things were complicated. I'm not asking about Neil. I'm asking about you. Did you personally pick up your phone at any point in 4 years and think about calling me? Another pause. Longer. I know we had some difficulty. My grandson turned 7, 8, 9, and 10 while I didn't know what his voice sounded like anymore. I said, "That's not complicated. That's a choice. A series of choices. And now you're here because you need something. And I want us to be honest with each other about what this is." Neil's jaw was tight. Shauna had gone very still. "I love my son," I said. "That has not changed. But I need you both to understand something clearly before this conversation goes any further." I looked at Shauna directly. "You do not get to walk into a relationship you walked out of and immediately begin making decisions about my property. You do not get to back a truck into my driveway before you've even said hello." "We thought," Shauna began. "I know what you thought," I said, and I did. She thought what people like her always think, that the person they've spent years treating as optional will be so relieved to be wanted again that they'll accept any terms offered. She thought my loneliness was a lever she could pull. She wasn't wrong that I'd been lonely. She was wrong about what I'd done with it. "Here's what I can offer," I said. "I have a friend, her name is Connie, whose daughter rents out a mother-in-law suite in her home in West Asheville. It's $1,200 a month, utilities included, and it's clean and private, and there's a good school for Marcus within walking distance. I can call her today and put in a word for you." Shauna stared at me. You're not going to let us stay?" "I'm offering you a real solution," I said. "A good one." "But the cabin is my home," I said, "which I'd purchased with my own money and which I am not required to share with anyone." The silence in that kitchen was profound. I got up and poured the coffee because my hands needed something to do and because I am, at my core, still a woman who pours coffee when there's coffee to pour. Neil spoke first. His voice was quiet. "Mom, I owe you an apology." I looked at him. "I should have called," he said. I handled a lot of things badly. I let other people make decisions I should have made myself." He wasn't looking at Shauna when he said it, but the words landed where they were aimed. Something unlocked in my chest. "Just slightly. I know," I said. "Is there any chance?" He stopped, cleared his throat. "Is there any chance we could start over? Slowly, the right way?" I thought about that. "Yes," I said, "there is a chance, but it has to be the right way. That means honestly. That means Marcus knows his grandmother. That means I'm not managed or handled or kept at a distance when it's convenient." I looked at Shauna. "For both of you." Shauna had gone through several expressions in the past few minutes. I'd watched calculation, then frustration, then something that might have been the beginning of genuine reckoning. She was smart enough to know when a plan had failed. Whether she was capable of something more than plans, I didn't know yet. "Okay," she said finally. Her voice was different, smaller. "Okay. I called Connie from the kitchen while they waited. Connie, being Connie, picked up on the second ring, listened to me explain the situation in 2 sentences, and said she'd call her daughter immediately. By the time I came back to the table, she'd already texted me a number. I slid the piece of paper across to Neil. He took it. He looked at it for a long moment. "Thank you," he said. "You can thank me by showing up," I said. "That's all I've ever asked." Garrett, who had been sitting on the porch steps for the better part of an hour without anyone explaining anything to him, helped reload the truck without being asked. I watched through the window as Shauna stood beside the passenger door, arms crossed, staring at the tree line. I don't know what she was thinking. I don't know what she was angry or ashamed or something in between. I know that she turned before she got in the truck and looked at the house, and I was standing in the window and we saw each other clearly. That felt like something, not resolution exactly, but a beginning of honesty that we'd never had before. Neil came back to the door before they left. He hugged me, a real hug, not the half-second kind, and he smelled the same way he had when he was 12 years old and fell off his bike, and I held him in the driveway while he cried. Time is strange like that. It collapses at the most unexpected moments. "I'll call you," he said. "I'll answer," I said. He nodded. Got in the truck, I watched them back out of the driveway, and then I stood in my kitchen alone in the quiet. I did not feel triumphant. I want to be clear about that, because I think people expect that when you hold your ground, there's some flush of victory that comes with it. What I actually felt was something quieter. Tired, a little. Sad, a little, for all the years. But also steady, like I had stood on ground that was mine and remained standing, and that the ground had held. I called Connie. She came over 30 minutes later with coffee cake and her dog, a large and ridiculous golden retriever named Biscuit, who immediately put his head in my lap and refused to move, and we sat at my kitchen table for 2 hours and talked about everything and nothing, and that was enough. That was, in fact, exactly enough. Neil called that Wednesday. We talked for 45 minutes about his job search, about Marcus's soccer games, about small, ordinary things that felt extraordinary after 4 years of nothing. Shauna didn't call, but she sent a text, short, without flourish. "I know I have a lot to make up for. I'm going to try." I wrote back, "That's all I'm asking. I don't know how this story ends. I'm in the middle of it, the way we're always in the middle of our own stories. But I know this, the cabin is still mine. The creek still runs behind it, and I go up there on Sunday mornings with my watercolors and my coffee, and I sit on the back porch and I paint the hemlocks badly, and every time I do, I think about Aunt Vera and the gift she gave me. Not just the money, but the reminder that a life built quietly and carefully and on your own terms is a life worth having. I earned this, every single square foot of it, and I am not apologizing for that to anyone. I've thought a lot about that Saturday morning since it happened. Not obsessively. I'm past the age of replaying things on a loop and calling it processing, but thoughtfully. The way you turn a smooth stone over in your hand and look at it from different angles, what strikes me most is how much of what happened was simply the result of choices, not fate, not luck, just choices, compounding over time, the way interest compounds. Shauna made choices for 4 years. I made choices for 4 years. And on that morning, all of those choices arrived at the same door at the same time. She chose silence when connection was possible. She chose to treat my love for my son as a problem to be managed, rather than a gift to be welcomed. And when she needed something, she chose to arrive unannounced with a truck, banking on the assumption that 4 years of absence had made me desperate enough to accept any terms. That was her calculation. It was a reasonable one, based on who I used to be. What she hadn't calculated was who I had become in those 4 years. That's the part that I want to be honest about, because I think it matters. I didn't hold my ground that morning because I'm naturally strong, or because I had some gift for confrontation. I held my ground because I'd spent 4 years doing the slow, unglamorous work of rebuilding myself. Therapy, walking, painting badly, letting Connie sit with me through the hard holidays, learning, gradually and imperfectly, that my worth was not something another person could revoke by withdrawing their approval. That's the work. That's the only work that actually matters in situations like this one. You can't logic your way into self-respect. You can't read enough books about boundaries to suddenly have them. You build them the same way you build anything real. Slowly, with setbacks, with the occasional morning where you sit at your kitchen table and wonder if you're doing it right. I think about Neil, too, about that hug before he got in the truck. He said I let other people make decisions I should have made myself, and I believe him. I believe that he suffered in those 4 years, differently than I did, but genuinely. Weakness isn't the same as malice, and I've had to hold on to that. A person can love you and still fail you. Knowing the difference between someone who failed you and someone who doesn't care, that's a kind of intelligence that only comes from paying close attention over a long period of time. I don't know yet what Neil and I will be to each other going forward. We're building something new, and new things are fragile at first. But I know that whatever it becomes, it will be honest. Because I'm not willing to buy connection at the price of my own dignity anymore. That transaction never actually works. You pay and pay and pay. And at the end, you have neither the connection nor yourself. Aunt Vera never married. Some people thought that was sad. I used to, a little. Now I think she understood something that took me until my 60s to grasp. A life built on your own honest terms, quietly and with integrity, is not a consolation prize. It is the prize. The cabin is still there. The creek still runs. I'm going up Sunday.